Here we go. We got the man himself, the Mexican mega mind from LA.
What up?
My brother from another mother wearing his wonderful Freedom Builders t-shirt and sweater representing the OG Freedom Builder, the one and only Mr. Angel Garcia. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good and proud to rock this.
All day, bro, all day. And I'm super excited to connect with you and share with people your mind and your product that you've developed, which is really an answer to so many prospectors' prayers. Because I know one of the challenges for people who actively prospect on a regular basis is I'll hear constantly, from coaching clients, hey, my answer rate is low, or hey, people aren't picking up because it's spam, or hey, the data's not good. And you used all of your experience, which was building a team, backing out of that team, making a crazy amount of money doing wholesale deals, then switching to solar and building out this kind of, this rocket ship really on a sales team and having telemarketers, and then figuring out the software piece that you're hitting like 20 contacts an hour. Is that right?
No, come on, man. We're doing way more than that.
Are you really, bro? What are you doing?
41 contacts an hour average. Now, there's more connections than that. Obviously, the better the data, the more people that you'll be able to talk to. But like live answers where you actually get a conversation out, the average across the board has been about 40 to 41, which is insane. It's not even on the same planet.
No, it's not.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, for anybody who's actively prospected, if you're dialing, it's going to be way less than that, obviously. And even if you're using these other products and services, which we shall not mention their names, but there are other ones who, rhyme with hobo, let's say. They don't have the data that you have access to, and they don't have kind of the software. So talk to us a little bit about what prompted you to create the Enzo dialer. What was kind of the aha that caused you to say like, hey, like this could be helpful or useful to other people, and why you decided to make it available to other people? Because truthfully, you could just hoard this information and just use it for your teams, whether it's on solo, the solar or wholesale or anything.
That was the original plan.
Yeah, well, I don't want to pretend it was benevolent. It was at first, yes, I'm just going to use it for me.
That was the original plan. I was like, this is my secret weapon and take over the world, right? But what ended up happening is I had a buddy that had heard that I was doing this and working on it. We were getting crazy good results, right? We scaled our operation. We had reduced our cold callers down to 15 because we were having issues with connections. Like calls kept showing up as spam. All of a sudden, it felt like it really felt like cold calling was dying. And
in effect, to be truthful, we've talked about this before, that for people who are using older technologies, it is dying.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things that go behind it, but nevertheless, what happened is I went from 15 to over 100 cold callers under like that were running for our business in a really short amount of time. It was just all of a sudden we were able to scale. It was just kind of like making cold calls back in 2012. It was just like, ridiculous amount of contacts, quality of conversations have gone up, all that stuff. So that I had a buddy of mine that asked me about it. I put him on it, and he calls me back like half an hour later, and he's like, "Dude, this thing is insane! Like, you cracked the code." And he's, it's just excited as heck, excited as you can be. And his business is primarily doing cold calls. He had already done over $1 million the previous year on just cold calling, or primarily cold calling. And all of a sudden, cold calling started to drift away from him too. Yeah. So I put him on it. He got super excited, started going crazy about it, convinced me to license it, and I couldn't get it out of my head. So I started working on that, and we just launched it last month, and everybody that's jumped on it has been going crazy.
That's awesome.
So
yeah. And yeah, I just talked to Jose about it, and he was telling me he not only hired your team with telemarketers, but obviously they're using the dialer and the data. And he's like, yeah, bro, it's the third listing we've taken in 30 days.
Already,
And what
I haven't checked
yeah,
in with them. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And what I explain to people is like, look, man, sometimes you don't have to be good. You just have to be there. And if you're talking to 40 people an hour, dude, like you're condensing time. So let's say
That's
with
it.
other systems, if you're making, let's say 20 contacts a day, but that's taking you 4 hours to do.
Yeah.
Well, that means that in a 5-day time span, you're talking to 100 people. And in a month time span, you're talking to 400. Well, if you're talking to 40 an hour in the same 4-hour time span, you're basically going to talk to almost the same amount of people, 160 people in one prospecting session of 4 hours.
Yep.
So it is really like a 5x difference in the number of contacts that you're going to make, which just from the law of probabilities, you're going to bump into somebody who wants to do something.
Well, it's more than that, right? Because there's a lot of other things that come into this, right? Because when you start calling and you're talking to people at this type of pace, it also changes your prospecting session. Because you got to think
Yeah.
about it. What are you doing if you're calling for 3 hours and you're getting 20 contacts at the end of those 3 hours or end of those 4 hours? What was really happening in between contacts?
Fuckery.
Exactly. So when someone finally says hello, you're like, you're trying to snap back into it, and you're like, oh, where am I? After you're watching your YouTube video, or on Instagram and stuff like that, you're trying to click on. So you're not as sharp as you are when you know that you're expecting another call to be connected 3 seconds later. You know what I mean?
It's 100% accurate. So, and what I was saying is that cold calling wasn't necessarily dying. It's just that the mechanism and the technology, like it works and it's always going to work. What I'm
Yeah.
aware of is that the
In its current form, it
technology,
was dying.
yes, in its previous form, because all of these, providers are now providing technology that, number maybe spam, this sort of thing. If you're not in somebody's contact list, it's going to block, you reaching out. So there's always going to be somebody like you who is smart, ambitious, and, willing to take the time to figure something out. And it sounds like that's precisely what you've accomplished. So what it allows people to do is to make more quality. That's another thing that I want you to mention. Quality contacts. So talk about like why these contacts are so much more quality.
Well, there's a couple of differences, right? Because I think you're kind of going into the data side. So uh, when it comes to the dialer is one thing, right? So what the dialer's job is to be able to connect you with people in a shorter amount of time, right? Now you want to make sure that you're balancing out because you don't want to just be dropping calls either because you have a list that you need to protect, right? So when it comes to the quality, there's a couple of things that come and get tied to quality when it comes to the dial functionality. The first thing is just, like when you have that delay when someone says you jump into a call, all of a sudden they're already on their third hello. They're like,
Just
hello.
a tiny delay. Immediately you're going to be like, nope, I'm gone. Peace.
Yep. So those delays are super annoying. And if you don't believe that affects your dialing, or the quality of the phone calls or the quality of like your contacts, yeah, you're already starting off with a fight with people with that. So what we did is I went after how to fix that. How do I condense that and reduce the time that it takes for people to get connected? We were able to accomplish that. The other thing is now also like on, let's say, for something as simple as like a voicemail detection. So most of the time when you get connected on a call or like it turns green and you're like, oh, I got a call. Well, what ends up happening when you're using these other services, or other technologies, half the time it's not even a person that you connected with. You're just connecting to a voicemail or you're connecting to some dead air or something like that, right? Well, we were able to reduce that to under 10% of the calls, which means that every time that it's go time, it's actually go time. So that's how the quality of the calls now start getting better.
I understand. So you've reduced that empty space by 90%. So for that reason, the quality of those conversations is going to be much higher because when
You're getting more true connections.
you're getting more true connection, like somebody like hello, you're like hello, like right away.
Yeah, like you're actually talking to people. That's the difference. Like
Mm.
you will actually be talking to people for the majority of your dialing session.
Wow. I want you to, if you're watching this right now, drop in the comments or the chat. If you could spend your 3-hour session actually talking to people for those 3 hours versus dead empty space, how many more contacts would you do? How many more appointments would you go on? How many more listings would you take? I know as somebody who built my business and grew my business through prospecting, that is enormous, bro, because what I'm aware of is that time compounds.
Yeah,
So think about how like a whole month's worth of all of that empty space that instead of just sitting there empty waiting for somebody to pick up, what happens now is you're actually having conversations during that time.
you're in conversation the majority of that session. The majority, you're on the phone. You're doing what you and I are doing. You're doing the thing that actually creates income,
That's exactly
therefore
right.
increasing your dollar per hour.
Yeah, it's just I can logically conclude that if I spend more time engaged in the presence of prospects, like Jim Rohn would tell us, our job is to be in the presence of prospects, that if instead of dead empty space, I am on the phone actually speaking to people, I can logically conclude that my contacts will go up, which will mean my appointments go up, which means my presentations go up, which means my contract sign goes up, which means my income goes up. Like, period, end of
Correct.
story.
Correct.
I love that. So the dialer itself, again, helps you to actually get people on the phone. It actually decreases the dead space. So you're spending more time talking to people and therefore radically increases the level of contacts that you're making on a regular basis.
Correct.
Got it. So
Correct.
now we can
And
talk.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
and it gives you much better insights on how you're being productive. One of the things I was always looking at, I run a team. I've always managed teams, and now I manage a very large team for the different businesses that we have, right?
Mhm.
So the managing people, especially when you're paying them an hourly on the phones, you being able to track the hours that are actually being worked and the times that it's being spent on once someone hangs up before they type in their notes, all that stuff. Having those insights are extremely valuable. It's the efficiency, right? I built a dialing system that is based off of what business owners and users actually want versus like what a geek or a developer thinks that you may want, right? I'm my biggest user. That's the key difference. So every bit of efficiency when it comes to managing people's time, as far as let's say, someone typing in notes. I found out that most people are spending on average, and these are guys that are even like productive, they're spending 30% of the time on their entire dial session just trying to type in notes.
Because they're having so many conversations.
Well, just in general, no. In general, right, even with an efficient dialer like mine, 30% of the time is wasted putting in notes, sometimes more. So what we did is I hired somebody to basically put in notes. So
Oh,
giving
I
people
see. I got
30%
it.
back. So now my team doesn't type in notes at all. We have a VA at the end that'll type in notes, and I built out a dashboard that literally created that entire process. It's built into the dialer.
Wow. So, and
Yeah.
now what I'm aware of is that a separate service? Because there's multiple things that you have going on here. One is the dialer itself. The second is you actually have callers that use your dialer, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And for the people that so let's say if somebody decided there's multiple ways that they can engage with you. One is to use the dialer. I just dropped in the chat a link. Bro, this is a no-brainer. Like, immediately, don't pass go, don't collect $200, like, get on that like right away. Okay. Because if you're an active prospector, this is going to be a game changer for you. That's one way that they can engage with you. The second way they can use it for themselves personally when they're making calls, right? And cold calling,
Oh
whoever they're
yeah.
calling, expires, for sale by owners, probates, whatever. The second way that they can engage with you guys is you actually have a team. How many telemarketers? 100?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they
I have
use the dialer.
Yeah, and we're our biggest customer. Like I have more callers on than any other customer that we currently have. So I know what problems like we are always trying to solve. So everybody on the development team is focusing on creating solutions for stuff that I know would be nice as far as development, like certain integrations, things like that.
I love that. So, okay, so that's and talk to me a little bit about if somebody wanted to engage with you guys, because okay, what I shared with agents is from 2020, let's say, 2 to 2023, volume went down 20 to 30%, depending on where they are geographically, right?
40% in
And
a lot of markets.
Yeah. And I shared with agents like, look, what we do doesn't change as agents. How much of it we do and how we do it is what changes. So in 2020, let's say two, you could probably get away with talking to 10 people a day, still do the business that you wanted.
Yeah.
Well, when volume drops 20, 30, 40% in a geographic area, if you logically, there will be less people that are going to engage. We went from 6 million to 4 million transactions. And I believe in 2024, we're on track to do about the same. I need to be making more contacts in order to find the people that have a high enough motivation to actually do something. That's such a logical conclusion. Now, most agents, depending on their train of thought and who has access to their thinking, are like, okay, Angel needs to do that. Aaron needs to be the one doing that. So they turn themselves into the type of person that can do that. So if that's you and you just want to use the dialer, great, bang away, do it. And it'll radically increase your, contacts and radically therefore increase, opportunities, leads, appointments, contracts signed, income. Great. Another logical conclusion is depending on how big you want to go. Cause I tell people all the time, dude, like they come to me and they're like, hey, what should I be doing? I'm like, well, what's your goal? Because your goal dictates the action that you have to take. Like if you want to do 20 deals, 30 deals, 40 deals, 50 deals, yeah, get the dialer, do it yourself. Great. You want to do like 150, 200, what would make logical sense is to not only get the dialer and do it yourself, but also hire the telemarketers that are using the dialer. Because then let's say you're making 100 contacts a day. The team is making 100 contacts a day. Now we're multiplying 200. We're talking to 1,000 people. So we're basically compressing. It would normally take, let's say, at 100 contacts times 4, it would take, you're doing 5 months worth of work in 1 month. So what would that look like? Like who is the avatar for, let's say, people that work with your telemarketers, and what exactly do they do? And what do people get?
Well, okay. So here's the thing though. So what you're talking about doing a 5x, that's like on a personal level, right? Because you're just literally talking to that many more people. We found that the average person is actually like on certain services, one of the most common ones in the realtor space is making about 6 to 8 contacts or conversations per hour.
Yeah.
Well, with the right technology, you can go up to hover in that 40 range, right? Um, that'll immediately 5x your dollar per hour when it comes to the prospecting side. Any business that you do with cold calling, it's better to do it on a tool that allows you to condense the time in between your contacts. Now when you're talking about the cold calling stuff, so yeah, I do have telemarketers. We do offer it out as a service as well. And with the telemarketers, what the reason I actually started telemarketers for my business was because I just wanted to follow up. Like if I'm a business professional and I'm constantly looking on how I can increase my dollar per hour, I wanted to figure out how do I create a situation where I can follow up with more motivated people, reduce the number of contacts that I need to make to get a deal. Well, if I was following up with more motivated people, then that would help. That's why you push probates, right? Like probates are a much higher quality contact than maybe calling a just listed, just sold. So same thing here. If I'm calling people that have already been qualified by a fronter, right, a telemarketer that says, "Hey, this person is already interested," and boom, they transfer it over and give it to somebody that's already more skilled like myself, that immediately increases my dollar per hour tremendously, right? Because it takes how many contacts to get an appointment, right? Well, if someone else is setting up that appointment or generating that lead for you ahead of time, you're reducing the amount of time and contacts that it takes for you yourself to be able to take a listing
Yeah. So
and
it's
get a
interesting
contract
because
signed.
I was just talking to Jose, and he was on his way to, he has 3 listing appointments today, right? And he was telling me that, like, he has the team, he's using the dialer, but he also has your team that are calling. And he's like, I don't know what it is, bro, but like once they get to me, they're like very receptive. Once I get on the phone with them, they're like super receptive to have me come and have a conversation with them. So it's allowing him to be like, because he's got a lot of stuff going on, it allows him to be very, very efficient, to your point, with his prospecting.
Oh yeah.
So in other words, like, let's say you're out there doing your thing, and making your 40 contacts a day using the dialer, and then, or 40 contacts an hour. And then you also have this team that are out there doing the same thing. But when those leads come to you, they're already like teed up. They just need to be like pre-qualified and then go on the appointment and list the property.
Yeah,
Which really
that's right.
condenses time, like you're saying, right? Allows you to be like exceptionally efficient with the activity.
Yep. You're focusing on motivated people. So imagine if every conversation that you're making is the quality of an expired that's interested in selling, but they're not talking to as many agents as the expireds do. That's all it is.
That's all.
That's
I
all it
love
is.
that. And then so that makes total sense to me. And for anybody who's interested in like scaling and doing like numbers and is not allergic to money, they should definitely be doing that.
Some
Right?
people are allergic to
Some
money.
people are. I know, bro. Not me and you though. And then
No.
talk to me about the difference in data, because I remember us having a conversation and you educated me. Like I had no idea that there were like tiers of data.
Oh
And
yeah.
when we say data, we mean like phone numbers, and the tiers go based on quality, right? So like the quality of the information, meaning like how accurate it is. So talk a little bit about that and why it's so important.
Yeah. So I was getting data from a lot of the common sources, right? Like from a lot of these dialers, they'll provide data. And if you're calling it, most people know not to call that data because they know that the quality of the contacts are just not good at all.
Yeah.
And if you haven't figured that out, you haven't been prospecting long enough. But that's where, you got things like LexisNexis and some other big guys that have started looking for different sources
I
for quality.
I'd used them in the past.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll see that a lot of people will look for higher quality contacts, right? You want to get a hold of high value people, high value contacts. And if you have cheap data, you can't get a hold of them. Well, what I started to find out was that number one, everything's all about efficiency. If I can find a way to just increase my efficiency by 25%, that's huge, right? If I'm making $1 million a year, that's an extra 250,000 bucks a year, right? Just from making an adjustment on like how accurate the numbers are if it's just 20%. Well, what ends up happening is that I went after that and I ended up being able to do a lot more than that. And the reason is because everything has a snowball effect. When it comes to data, if you're getting a hold of the right people, not only are you getting a hold of the right people, but you're also talking to the people that most people aren't getting, right? Let's say when it comes to data, right? You're getting like, let's say Cole Realty or Cole Resource and some of these very, very cheap data sources. Well, what ends up happening is all this cheap data is, let's say, this big of the pie, right? But then there's 20% of the pie on that rim that people do not have, right? Other
And
people don't
nobody's
have
talking
access
to
to that information, and nobody's talking to them. Imagine making phone calls, or imagine going out door knocking in a gated community. Nobody's talking to them. Nobody can get in there to talk to them, right? So you go in and door knock them. It's not the I've already had 3 people come by, or I'm not interested, right? It's like this is a fresh conversation. So what ends up happening is that conversion goes through the roof. We actually checked it and we actually looked at what was converting. We had more converting from the 20% that wasn't in the general list than the stuff that was in there. And the reason is because the stuff that's in that big pie, right, where the cheap leads are at or the cheap data is from, that stuff is being hit up by every single like
provider.
anybody that reaches homeowners, and every provider. White Pages has it, right? Yellow Pages, Kojo and hobos and all of that stuff, right? So insurance guys are hitting it,
Shulkin.
solar guys are hitting it, real estate
Yeah.
guys are hitting it, investors
Yeah.
are hitting it, but everybody's hitting that 80%, right? So if that 80% is everybody's hitting it, that's a very tired list, a very tired data record, right? The 20% isn't tired.
Yeah. So what that makes me think of is like red oceans and blue oceans.
Yeah.
So the 80% that everybody has access to, and they try to differentiate themselves and say that they're better, or like, hey, we provide you with like, we have like a black service that's like, we'll give you better data, you got to pay more for it, sort of thing. The truth is that they're all getting data from the same places, and those are 80%, right? And that's a red ocean. So everybody's calling, everybody's banging, right? And what that'll do is that results in low conversion rates. Well,
Yep.
if you can get access to that 20% that nobody's calling, then the conversion rates, meaning the pickup rates, are going to be like insane. Hence the reason why you're getting 40 contacts an hour.
It's an unfair advantage. It's an unfair advantage when you're playing the game right. You're
Yeah,
getting a hold of
and
people.
what I just love, bro. First of all, I love unfair advantages because like I share with people all the time. They're like, "Yeah, competition's good." I'm like, "For who? It's not good for me, dude." Like,
Yeah.
I want to dominate, right? And if I have an unfair advantage, I want to use it. So it's an unfair advantage, and on top of it, if you're skilled, forget about it, bro. It's lights out.
Yeah. It's it's not even fair. It's not fair in any way. So there's so many different ways to be efficient, right? Like you have the data. So one of the things I didn't even touch on the dialer too, by the way. So it's not just about like, hey, the quality of the contacts is better because you're connecting a lot quicker and so on. No, a lot of the part that makes it better is that, let's say for example, if you have let's say you put in 100 homeowners. Well, when you look at how many of those homeowners you were ever able to actually make contact with, you're getting a much higher percentage of them on the phone because you're not running into the likely spam rates and the carriers aren't blocking your call. And that's just from, making a couple of adjustments on how you're dialing and dialing responsibly, registered verified numbers, and call that to station level A.
Now, I don't know what you just said there. So explain what you just said. That was like some high level shit right there.
So there's carrier started blocking phone calls a while back. That's why cold calling started to dramatically reduce in its effectiveness. In the last 2 years, you've seen more people fall off of cold calling than ever in the past. The reason is because calls started, like, the carriers are now carrying a score and a grade on who's calling their network.
And the answer was because I'm aware there was like a period of time. It's interesting because there's always like evolution. And I've heard that like I think Gary Vee says like marketers ruin everything. So something works, everybody, nothing breeds competition like profit. Everybody piles in and then they beat the hell out of it. And then it no longer works anymore at the same rate that it used to. It's just that money has an addictive quality. And because of that, we get addicted to the way that we receive it. So people hang out for too long. But there was a period of time where what the game was to switch out phone numbers. And there were different dialers, whether it's batch or others, that like would do it automatically, and you could pay to have a bunch of phone numbers, that sort of thing. And that was a period of time. And what you're saying, and I mean, essentially what I'm hearing from you is that like what you've built has ushered in a new period, a new window of
Yeah,
opportunity.
it's we've broken through what other people haven't been able to do. And I say it confidently, man. If you could see the messages that I get, like literally every single day, with people like their jaws have dropped with how different the productivity is. Like, I didn't even know this, but Jose, and I talk to Jose obviously all the time. He's one of my best friends, right? If not my best friend, right? But I didn't know that he's already taken 3 listings from the stuff. But I'm getting messages like that all the time, all the time, because it's so dramatically different than what people are used to. The
Right. Go ahead.
it's so dramatically different than what people are used to, especially when you've been using channels or technology that isn't allowing you to break through and actually connect, right? If the carriers are blocking all of the calls, what's the point of calling?
Yeah. So there's two components, right? So like, we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort teaching agents specifically what to say and how to say it, specifically how to have intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, recognize patterns. So that way you can go to a particular kind of handler and allow you to be able to convert, right? The challenge is if you're spending an hour on the phone and only talking to 3 people, I can't really use that skill as frequently as I could if I'm having 40 conversations every hour.
It's
And you need
completely
both.
unfair.
You
Yeah.
need both. So I would propose that the skill set of learning what to say and how to say it is an unfair advantage. If you match that with your dialing system, bro, it's lights out,
Mm-hmm.
right? There'd be no reason why you couldn't double or triple, again, contacts, appointments, listings taken. And now more than ever, I mean, my experience is particularly with volume down, the competition on the listing side is just more because there's less people. So any unfair advantage that I can obtain, like I should be seeking it and obtaining it. I don't care how much it costs.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing, right? Like you'll find you compete with a lot less people than you're used to when you're talking to the people that other people aren't talking to. Again, the competition is really, really high in those red oceans.
Hmm.
But there is a blue ocean out there, and it is still exists literally in what we do.
Yeah, and I
And
know that that's true, like experientially. So if I reflect back, like when I did 100 deals and 75 were expireds, like expireds at that time was it was a blue ocean because there were so many and there weren't that many people, and so I just dominated that. But then what happened was is the marketplace got better and that source shrunk. So I was like, oh man, I need another source. And somebody was like, hey, Aaron, you live in heaven's waiting room. And I was like, yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. And then I got proximity to the right people, figured that out. And then that became 50% of our business. But that was very much so a blue ocean. So I took the skills that I acquired that helped me to sell 100 homes a year in one space and applied them to a blue ocean. And then we went from 100 to 200 transactions in a calendar year. Right. So I know that what you're saying is accurate. So it's really the formula that's percolating to the surface is acquire the specialized knowledge of talking to strangers, setting appointments, pre-qualifying those appointments, presenting, handling objections, closing. Done. Acquire that specialized knowledge. Get proximity to people who can teach you that at whatever cost, because it'll be totally worth it long term. What's also simultaneously needs to be happening is I need to have the best tools. And this is crazy, Angel, because you know that book that I always reference, because it's changed my thinking more than anything else in the last probably 3 to 5 years, which is the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And he talks about in that book, you need 4 things to accumulate wealth. The first is you need specialized knowledge. That's what we're talking about. What to say, how to say it, right? And you can't learn that in school. It doesn't exist there. So you have to seek out people who have that specialized knowledge, because the only way you can acquire it is through iteration, like doing shit. So seek out people who have that specialized knowledge. You always tell me all the time, you're like, dude, I don't want the guy who's teaching the classes. I want the guy or gal who taught the guy. I want that one. And I'll pay whatever I have to pay to get access to him. Whatever that is. If I got to fly somewhere, if I got to pay a bunch of money, I want that person. Just like I did with figuring out media. I went to Jose and I was like, yo, who in your mastermind, the collective genius one, knows media the best? He's like, yeah, they all have classes. Nobody makes more money than Ryan. That's the one I want to talk to. Right. And I paid him a bunch of money to get proximity to him. And, now we're, getting much more attention. But first, I need specialized knowledge. The second thing I need are tools. And I want everybody on this call to realize, like, what we're talking about is a tool. It is a tool that you can use to get more contacts per hour, which radically increases the probability that you'll get your hit your goals objectives. So tools would be like dialers. It'll be like data. That's a tool. Tools would be like CRMs. That's a tool. AI is a tool. These are tools. The third thing I need is leverage. Leverage breaks down into 4 categories: labor, capital, which is money, media, which is what we're doing here, and then software. I would propose this is a little bit of that because it's software. And it's definitely that for Angel, right? And then the last one is you need judgment, good judgment. And judgment is about what's best for the long term. So like, if you're sitting here watching, you're like, oh man, like, I don't know if I can afford it. Bro, you can't afford not to do it long term. Like there's no, oh man, like, I don't know. It's like $180 or whatever it is. I'm like, bro, the data, bro, like you
Dude,
can't not do it.
the funniest thing is, like, what is your time worth? Because if your time is not worth $180 in a month to like 5x your business, at least from, like, I would imagine that, a lot of the people that follow you, a lot of people that are in the industry, right, when it comes to real estate, the phones are involved in their business.
Have to be. Because that's
right?
what we teach. I mean, I can't give something I don't possess. And that's the way I grew the business and maintained it and expanded it.
So if someone doesn't value their time enough to actually go out and make their time worth more by using a certain tool, they do not value their time, or they
No.
haven't made that connection.
Yeah. And what it makes me think about too is we have this leadership retreat coming up in the DR, and I'm preparing for, kind of what I'm going to be sharing. And one of the things I'm going to be sharing is this idea of trades that we all make. So there's 3 trades that we make. One is time for money. And I think that gets a bad rap. There's nothing wrong with trading time for money. You just want to make sure that it's a equitable trade. I want to make sure I'm being compensated appropriately for my time, right? But most people never expand out of that. They stay there forever. Because what they do is they take the money that they earn and they go buy lifestyle shit, and then they stay stuck trading time for money forever. The second trade that you want to graduate into, which is what you're referring to, is money for time. So you're taking a little bit of money to reclaim massive amounts of time. All this dead time that you have sitting on the phone, not talking to people, right? So you're trading money for time. And then the last trade that you want to make is money for money. And the idea is you want to be doing that all the time. And that's what this dialing system and the data and the callers allow you to do. And specific, like the callers specifically, that's trading money for time, because you're not physically there doing that. You're leveraging labor, other people's labor, which goes back to, remember, if I want to create wealth, 4 things: specialized knowledge, tools, dialer, leverage, which is labor. That's one. And then good judgment over time. So if somebody says like, hey man, I don't know, having 2 dialers, like, because you know what I hear from people all the time, Angel, and maybe you can manage this expectation for people. They're like, well, how do I know that if I hire 2 dialers and fucking spend X amount of money, that I'm going to do X amount of deals? Like, or if I use this dialer and I pay a couple $100 a month, like, how do I know I'm going to, like, so what is your response to that? Because I know it's wild to me. It's like when people talk to me about the EXP thing and I'm like, we just hit 300 agents. People are like, how do I know? I'm like, I know the way the sky is blue and the grass is green, bro. This is the way. Yeah. So like, I know this is the way, because you see the numbers on the back end, you see what it does for your business. So when somebody asks you that type of question, I imagine you have to be so patient, because like, you're like, dude, I'm telling you.
I can speak from a place of like full on belief, right? Number one is obviously I've done it. I've been through it, and I do get it. I do understand where the fear comes in. That's all it is. It's just fear, right? It's just fear. Fear will prevent you from doing certain things. I mean, if we go back to those early conversations, before I started doing anything different, I was afraid to make a change.
I remember
right?
you sitting in a Freedom Builders mastermind, and I looked right at you. I'm like, bro, what if it was like 1,000 deals? And I remember you just like stopped. You were like, it was not something that you'd even considered yet. And then you just like exploded, like on the wholesale. You just went to a whole nother kind of stratosphere.
Well, it was even before that, right? Because I was even afraid to do anything other than what I was already doing as an agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very comfortable doing over 100 deals a year. So, that was the goal, right? But I was afraid, knowing that there was other opportunities or other things that I was like focusing in on and already kind of at the cusp of. I was kind of like just afraid to make that adjustment, because it was irrational fears that wouldn't allow me to make certain changes. But it took somebody to give me permission to say, hey, dude, no, you're good. Go ahead. Come on. Come on.
You got
Like,
this, bro.
like Papa just pushing me off the ledge, He's like, you want to swim? Here. Clack.
That,
just gave me the kick, and then learn how to swim, dude. You're good.
Kick in the ass and get in the ocean.
Yeah, so fear will mess you up, right? Fear will keep you from doing the things that you should be doing, right? Because the reality is this is a simple math thing, right? And I love basic math, right? Basic math is super simple. 1 + 1 = 2. So when you look at this in the sense of, hey, if I can talk to 5 times more people, 6 times, 8 times more people in that same hour or in that same amount of time, what does that do to my business? That's math.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's just
Super
math.
simple.
I
It's
love
a
that.
no-brainer. The next thing is when we're talking about time. Okay, well, how long does it take me to speak to somebody to get a qualified opportunity, right? Well, if I can condense that time, because I know what my time is worth, and I can reduce that down by, 10 times, well, what's that worth?
Right. So what I call it is, I've heard I think it was Jack Bogle, who the founder of Vanguard. He calls it the law of humble arithmetic, which is just simple math, bro. If I can make more contacts an hour, dramatically more, because if you're used to making 4 contacts an hour, you make 40, bro. That's a 10x jump. It's
Yeah.
gigantic.
It's the same conversation of like having a TC or an assistant,
right?
You
Same
get time back to be able to do more.
That's it. And you're reclaiming time. And then it goes back to like this, what just popped into my head too, is like there's pain. So let's say your pain is yeah, I'm making these calls, I'm working on my scripts, I'm handwriting them out, like I'm following the track that Aaron's telling me, I'm joining role play groups, and I'm working on my craft, but I'm only making 4 contacts an hour. And what I'm aware of is that radically hinders. I think people, they get it wrong, because like that meme that goes around, like 10,000 hours. It's not 10,000 hours, bro. It's 10,000 iterations. But if you're only getting 4 iterations an hour, bro, that's radically slowing down your learning curve. Versus if you could screw it up 40 times in an hour, I promise you're going to get better faster. Like 100%, right?
Yep.
Because you just have more at bats.
Yep.
So this idea that there's pain. So let's say you have pain because you're banging your head against the wall. Well, then it's like, okay, let's reflect. What's causing the pain? There's a bottleneck or a restriction for as many people that I'm able to speak to. Great. Well, now who can I transfer that off to? Well, they transfer that off to you. They transfer that off to your dialing system. They transfer that off to your dialers. And now they have more time. Now it's fill. What am I going to fill that time with? And the goal would be is you fill it with the 20% activities that lead to 80% of the results. If you're active in production, that's more prospecting, more lead follow-up, more going on appointments, more negotiate deals. And what can end up happening, particularly if you have the dialers, like for Jose now, most of his stuff is just lead follow-up. He's just following up with leads. So he's not doing the like banging through like and burning and churning. He's just talking to people that have already raised their hand and said, yeah, like I am open to a cash offer, or yeah, like, I am interested in like, finding out what my home's worth, or yeah, like I have been considering selling. And then you get him with his skill level talking to those people, bro. It's like you said, it's not fair.
Low-hanging fruit, man. It's scaling, right? It's the next level up. So the first level up is like, first when you first start dialing, it's like, all right, well, let me just call whatever I can call with however I can call it, right? And then with time, like you start adding different ways to get smarter about how you're using your time, right? So as you grow in the business, like Jose, for example, he doesn't make any outbound dials for the most part anymore, right? It's all lead follow-up. It's all prospectors that are prospecting for him, passing him over frontier closer model, right? ISAs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what do you think? Because you've gone through like these evolutions, right? So what do you think is a major stopping block? Because, it's interesting because like from a kind of chronological order, you were coming up in the game. And I think I met you and Jose like 10, 12 years ago. And I was still heavily in production, doing about 100 transactions a year. I was doing what you guys were aspiring to do.
Oh yeah.
And then you went through this evolution where you did it. And then you also got proximity to like Lars and other people. And then you backed out of it. And then you had a team that was just doing all the deals and you weren't even doing them anymore. And that was like a whole like, whoa, this is kind of interesting. And I didn't do that. And then you made the thing where you then took that rocket ship that you built and applied it to wholesale, and that exploded, and you did way more revenue than what you were doing, like magnitudes of revenue more than what you were doing there. And then you had the like, yo, I could just apply this to like a 9-figure opportunity, which is solar. So what do you think? Because I'm aware that those have, and you're relatively young, bro. I always like get on you because you're like 10 years old and shit. But like in your like you were doing this stuff like in your mid to late 20s.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I've always been like young, I've always been young in as I've been going through like my business journey, and I think even what I'm doing right now has been any different. Well, actually, you know what? Now it's starting to change up a little bit. Now I'm 31 now, so
dang,
I got a 3 year plan.
getting up there, bro.
Yeah, so it's I'm not the youngest guy in most circles anymore, so that's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, evolving into these different business opportunities. What I found out was just that I can use a lot of the same tools and practices that I've learned, right? Like, prospecting, right? Just the marketing channels, the business systems, all those systems, they work in multiple different ways. So when you think about it, right, like if I'm doing cold calling, let's just use cold calling for as an example, because obviously that's the primary marketing channel that I use, and that's also what all my businesses run off of. Well, when I realized that all my businesses run exactly the same, I said, well, why not apply this to other vehicles that can also use the same marketing channels, same tools, and create more stability, right? By having different arms and legs where I'm making income from.
Yeah, and I think the
So,
other thing that you graduated from was like you graduated from you physically being the one that is doing the technical work to having a team that does the technical work.
well, the interesting thing is that as you start to build a different like business or arm or anything like that, what you realize is the value of being able to build a business a different way because you have more oversight because you have a bird's eye view on the business. So the interesting thing is that when you first start a business, let's say for example, anybody that's a realtor, you're building your business from the bottom up, right?
Hmm.
When you go into your next business, you're usually starting to start another business from the top down.
That's interesting because what I'm thinking as you said that is I built the residential resale stuff bottom up, me as the rainmaker, the dancing bear. You know, I dance and people throw money at me. And the way that I'm doing this second, and actually I did that with the coaching business too, truthfully.
Yeah.
And now what I'm doing though with EXP and kind of, the organization, that's actually from the top down. So
Yeah.
what's happening
And
is now I'm duplicating myself. Now I understand the value of creating other leaders and within the organization. And what I'm learning, which I'm sure is true for you, I remember talking to Jose. I'm like, bro, it's actually easier to grow through other people than it is to grow from my own efforts.
you already know how to grow the business. So you can see with vision, right? Because you have a new vision that you gain after you've leveled up and become the guy, right? Once you've come in and conquered your business and your industry or your whatever it is that you're doing, and conquering is different for everybody, right? But once you're doing well, you're the guy or a guy that is now respectable for your business. You've usually learned a lot of tricks and techniques and tools
Skills.
and skills that allow you to have oversight where you can look at something else and see an opportunity a lot faster because you've already built another one, right? So you know how to do it. That doesn't mean that you have to apply your own time to do it, right? So when you're building a business from the top down, really what you're doing is you're looking for a guy that you can say, hey, we're going to go in this direction. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And we're going to kick some ass,
Yeah.
right?
So what that makes me, I love that, dude. I love that about you. So, yeah, what it makes me think about is the guy on my team, Heath, where like I said to him, like, yo, I'm going to teach you probate. I'm going to role play with you 3 times a week for 6 months. And it's going to work. And he would present me with situations, but because I have a lot of iterations before he's even done speaking, I know where he's going and I can do this, say this, do this. Bro, he's a part-time agent, bro, full-time cop, and did 21 deals last year, all from listing probates.
Well, put it this way, man. The whole purpose of you being a coach is that you, if you wanted to, could have built one of the most powerful teams in America. And essentially, you are and you did by starting your coaching program because how many people are not, probates was not a thing, right? All
Mm-mm.
of a sudden, you got everybody talking about probates, everybody that I know now, right? Because I think you've like just bled into the industry as far as like everybody's got to be hitting probates, right? So
Yeah.
people are learning how to hit probates and how to communicate. Like you, I'm hearing people use your scripts when they're like doing their role plays and stuff. I'm like, hey,
Hey, I know. Hey, hey, I know where you got that
as
from.
soon as they start saying, I'm imagining that, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. So, you start hearing certain like phrases that you know where the source is coming from.
Yeah.
And you essentially helped other people build their business with the bird's eye view down by coaching them, right? You're giving them insights of things that they would not be able to do in the short amount of time that they're doing it because you're guiding them throughout that process.
Yeah. You're like
So
radically condensing the learning curve. Like the way I
yeah,
view it is like, let's say me and you were on a hike It's like, we're two hard charging smart people. We could figure out how to get to a mountain. It's much easier if we have a guide that's already been there. Because
Yeah.
we'll end up eating some berries and shit in our pants and like, don't do that. And or we'll end up
Yeah.
going one way and we're like, oh man, there's a tiger over there. We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Versus if we have a guide with us, they can point that stuff out to us. You could be like, well,
Yeah.
those berries look really yummy. And you're like, yeah, I understand. I thought the same thing too. I promise you don't want to eat them.
Yeah. It's
Like,
just
just
it's
ignore them
basically
and move
putting
on.
the bumpers on when you're bowling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And in a way, that's what your callers do. That's what because what you've done is you've taken everything that you've learned. And I tell people all the time, like, if our bodies are the hardware, our brains are the software. So Angel has some awesome software. Now, the problem for most people is that their software is only in their head. That's the problem. Well, what you've done, let's say with the dialers, is you took all of your experience selling 100 plus homes a year, and you've given the dialers your software. So that way now it's multiplication, right? It's duplication. And truthfully, it's leadership. I think the strength of a leader is is his or her ability to create other leaders. It's really what it's about.
What's awesome about that is that so when I built up my call center, it took one person to help me implement the game plan, right? Like it took when I said, all right, I'm gonna full on grow out my call center and like make this a thing, right? We started to hire different people to now use the systems, the tools, the processes that I was creating for my own prospecting, and then started implementing it at scale. So we started implementing, like we talked about quality control years ago, if you remember.
I do.
That's developed into a completely different thing. I've added it into the software that we use for the dialer. Like it's
That's
literally
cool.
built into it. Everything from the scorecard in there.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about it, I was like, bro, that is like so. I pulled a Jose, bro. That was such like a layer of thinking that as soon as you said it to me, I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense, bro. The reason why most people fall flat on their face is because they try to figure out how to do the ISA thing or dialer thing on their own, and then that pulls them out of production. And the problem is when the players, the coach, the accountability is weak, nobody's overseeing them, and da da da. So I heard Hermosi say today that like all the money's behind problems. And most people, he's like, I need you to rephrase the word problem in your mind to profit. So what you're doing is you're solving a huge problem with the dialer and with the data combined with the callers. And the problem is a lack of deals, a lack of opportunities. When you go from 6 million to 4 million, that's an issue. And pretty much everybody uniformly, everybody that I coach, and 12 people make over $1 million a year, they've all felt it. You're solving the problem of spending more time actually speaking to people instead of dead time. You're solving the problem of better quality contacts, data, right? And you're also solving the problem of them not having to train any of the dialers. Like you handle that whole thing for them. You have a quality control that has a scorecard and rates them. Are they saying this? Are they saying this at the opening? Are they doing this? Are they closing at this? Like you're monitoring all of that.
Well, there's management and leadership behind that too, right? So like I'll tell you like the structure that we have, and this was like something that we had to build out as we were growing and stuff. But what I like the first, like you think about the problems that you're trying to solve, to your point, right? So when you have cold callers, you have turnover, right? You have them saying things that they shouldn't be saying. You have them, slacking off, all that stuff. So you have to put systems and processes in place to be able to cover and fix those things. So the first thing that, like, the most essential role when you have a telemarketer is like you need quality control in place. They need to be monitored, right? So the quality control became super essential. It's like, all right, so what skills do we need to improve on, especially if you've got a couple of different people, and how can I systemize it? Because, let's be honest, right? Telemarketing is hard. So it's hard even if you're paid an hourly, right? So it's a high turnover position. So if you're constantly having to train new people to come into that role, how do I get them up and running quickly? And then how do I make sure that they're not saying things that they shouldn't be saying? So the quality control ensures that every single call that they have that is supposed to be a qualified opportunity that gets sent over, they're being reviewed and scored based off of that phone call, right? That's a full scorecard, and it's a pass or a fail. If it fails, it gets sent back and it becomes a coaching opportunity. If it passes, it still gets a scorecard, and then to what level and what other skills need to be improved, sent to the team leader. I have a team leader. Each quality control rep can handle up to 60 leads, that like all those opportunities per day. Then you have the team leader that's managing up to a team of 8 people. And then we have our dialer monitors that are watching them dial live and listening to live calls and jumping in and even coaching them while they're making the calls, talking to a homeowner where they can whisper in their ear. We have our ops manager that manages the entire operation. And then we've got recruiters on deck constantly ready to replace people. So that way we don't have to reduce our standards. We just continue focusing on growth, right, and
Yeah.
efficiency.
And the
So
issue is, so like, I just want everybody listening, okay, who's watching now or who will watch the rerun, what is the probability that you will stop everything that you're doing to build out something like that? Let me tell you exactly what it is. 0. Okay. You need to train money for time. Let him, take care of it for you because he's built it all out. And it's like, bro, it's a steal for what you're paying for, dude. Like it's an unbelievable steal and a supersonic competitive advantage. So what I've done is I've dropped in this chat a couple times the link. I'm going to put it right there. If you want to book a call with Angel's team to talk to them about the dialer, about the difference that the data makes, about his telemarketing team, book the call, bro. You'll be very, very happy that you did. I don't endorse things that I don't know with a super high degree of probability work, because I take the responsibility like really seriously, which is have like, some sort of influence. And I also don't do it without vetting like the person behind it. And Angel's rock solid, bro. He's as good as they come. Super smart, super ambitious, has a long track record of success in multiple different verticals. And he has a high level of integrity. Like, I'll always do the right thing. He'll treat you right and, take care of you. So I appreciate you, brother. You're the
appreciate
best.
you, man.
Yeah, man. I look forward to doing this again at some point.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's grow. Elite
Yeah.
builders coast to coast. We'll check you later, team. Let's go.